Everyone laughed when the mute Korean Mafia boss couldn't defend himself after his lawyer abandoned him. Then his black waitress arrived and translated his every sign. The courthouse steps were slick with rain, and Eliza Monroe's heart hammered against her ribs as she pushed through the crowd of reporters and protesters. Her server's uniform, black pants, white button-down with coffee stains from the morning rush, marked her as out of place among the lawyers in their $1,000 suits. But she didn't care. She'd left Songbird Restaurant mid-shift, apron still in her bag, because the news alert on her phone had stopped her cold. Park Hae-jung, alleged crime boss, abandoned by defense team hours before murder trial begins. Prosecution seeks death penalty. Eliza's hands trembled as she climbed the steps. She'd worked at Songbird for 3 years, serving banchan and bibimbap to LA's Koreatown elite, invisible to most customers. But not to him. Never to him. Park Hae-jung, the owner who never spoke, but whose eyes said everything. The man whose silence she understood because she'd grown up translating silence. Her little brother Isaiah had been born mute, and sign language was her second native tongue before she even started school. "Miss, you can't go in there without—" A bailiff tried to stop her at the courtroom door, but Eliza pushed past, her natural hair pulled back in a hasty bun, brown eyes blazing with determination she didn't know she possessed. The courtroom fell silent as she entered. All eyes turned to the black woman in a coffee-stained uniform who just interrupted the biggest trial in LA County history. And there at the defense table sat Park Hae-jung. Even in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, he radiated the same quiet authority she'd observed for 3 years. His hair, usually styled perfectly, fell across his forehead. Dark circles shadowed eyes that had always been kind to her, that had noticed when she was tired, that had left her anonymous envelopes of cash when her brother's medical bills piled up. Those eyes found hers across the courtroom, and she saw something crack in his careful composure. Surprise, hope, fear. Order! Judge Patricia Whitmore's gavel cracked like thunder. She was a black woman in her 60s, silver hair cropped short, with a reputation for running the tightest courtroom in California. "Young lady, I don't know who you are, but you've just committed contempt of court. Bailiff, Your Honor," Eliza's voice came out stronger than she felt. "My name is Eliza Monroe. I'm here to serve as Mr. Park's interpreter. He's mute, and his defense attorney abandoned him this morning. The court-appointed interpreter hasn't arrived. Without someone who understands Korean Sign Language, Mr. Park cannot participate in his own defense. That violates his constitutional rights." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Ms. Monroe, are you a certified legal interpreter?" "No, Your Honor. I'm a waitress at Mr. Park's restaurant, but I'm fluent in American Sign Language. My brother is mute, and I've learned Korean Sign Language over the past 3 years through daily communication with Mr. Park. I may be the only person in this building who can actually understand him." The prosecutor, a sharp-faced white man named Gregory Thornton, shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is absurd. We can't allow an untrained employee with obvious bias to serve as interpreter in a capital murder case. There are procedures, protocols—" "Procedures that your office exploited," Eliza interrupted, surprising herself. "Everyone knows Mr. Park's attorney, Robert Chen, was paid off to disappear. You timed this trial knowing Mr. Park would be defenseless. You're not seeking justice. You're seeking an execution." The courtroom erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously. The judge's gavel thundered again and again, and Park Hae-jung's hands moved in careful, deliberate signs that only Eliza could read. "Why are you here? This is dangerous. Leave, please." Eliza's hands responded automatically, muscle memory from 3 years of stolen conversations, of learning his language because she wanted to understand the man behind the silence. "I'm not leaving you." Not like everyone else did. Judge Whitmore's voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone sit down and shut up, or I'll clear this courtroom." Silence fell like a curtain. The judge studied Eliza for a long moment, then turned to Park Hae-jung. "Mr. Park, do you know this woman?" Hae-jung's hands moved, and Eliza translated without thinking. "Yes, Your Honor. She's worked at my restaurant for 3 years. She's honest, intelligent, and one of the few people who learned to communicate with me without being asked." "And do you want her to serve as your interpreter?" His hands moved faster now, and Eliza felt her throat tighten as she spoke his words. "I don't want to put her in danger, But if she's willing, I would trust her with my life. I trust her with my words. Judge Whitmore leaned back, fingers steepled. Mr. Thornton, much as it pains me to admit it, Ms. Monroe has a point. Your office has engaged in some questionable timing here, and the defendant has a constitutional right to understand and participate in his trial. Ms. Monroe, approach the bench. Eliza's legs felt like water as she walked forward. Up close, the judge's expression was unreadable. Young lady, do you have any idea what you're stepping into? Park Hae-jung is accused of ordering the execution of a federal witness. If he's convicted, enemies of his organization will view you as his ally. If he's acquitted, the prosecution will view you as an accomplice. Either way, your life becomes complicated and potentially dangerous. I know, Your Honor. Eliza's voice was steady despite her racing heart. But my little brother can't speak. I grew up watching people ignore him, talk over him, make decisions about his life without including him in the conversation. I won't let that happen to Mr. Park. Not when I can help. Something softened in the judge's eyes. You remind me of my daughter. Stubborn as hell and twice as brave. She raised her voice. Here's my ruling. Ms. Monroe will serve as interpreter under the following conditions. 1. A certified ASL interpreter will observe and flag any concerns about accuracy. 2. Ms. Monroe will be under oath, with perjury charges applicable if she mistranslates. 3. Both defense and prosecution can object to specific translations if they suspect bias. Mr. Thornton, I suggest you find the court interpreter who was supposed to be here, because this irregularity is on your office, not mine. We'll recess for 2 hours while I sort this mess out. Bailiff, remove Mr. Park's handcuffs. He's not going anywhere, and they impede his ability to communicate. The gavel fell. Eliza's knees nearly gave out. What had she just done? The holding room was small, institutional, smelling of disinfectant and despair. A bailiff stood by the door as Eliza sat across from Hae-jung, separated by a metal table. His hands were free now, elegant and expressive. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, the mute Korean Mafia boss and the black waitress who just risked everything for him. His hands moved. You shouldn't have come. Someone had to, Eliza signed back. They were going to railroad you. They still will, but now you're tied to the wreckage. His signs were sharp with frustration and something else. Fear, but not for himself, for her. Eliza, do you understand what I am? What they say I've done? I know what they say. I don't know the truth. She leaned forward. 3 years, Hae-jung. 3 years I've served you coffee every morning, watched you run Songbird, treat staff with respect, tip generously, donate to community programs. I've seen you stop fights without throwing a punch, help employees with immigration lawyers, pay for Mrs. Kim's cancer treatment when you thought no one knew. Whatever else you are, you're not the monster they're describing. You don't know what I've done, what I've had to do. His hands moved slowly now, weighted with regret. My father built an empire on blood. When he died, I inherited that legacy. I've tried to change things, move legitimate, but the past doesn't disappear just because you want it to. Did you kill the federal witness? No. The sign was emphatic, absolute. I was being set up by a rival organization. They killed him and made it look like my order. My lawyer was supposed to prove it, but they got to him, paid him more to walk away than I paid him to stay. Then we'll prove it. Eliza signed with more confidence than she felt. But Hae-jung, I need to know everything. I can't translate what I don't understand. I can't defend you if you hide things from me. He studied her for a long moment, and Eliza felt the weight of his gaze. Not uncomfortable, but intense, like he was trying to understand why this woman would throw herself into his fire. Finally, his hands moved. 3 years ago, you started at Songbird. You were different from other servers. You watched people. You noticed things. The third day, you saw me signing with a deaf vendor, and you signed to ask if I needed help translating technical terms he didn't know. Do you remember? Eliza nodded. She remembered. The vendor had been explaining an industrial refrigeration system, and some of the technical vocabulary was beyond his sign language education. She'd interpreted without thinking about it, just wanting to help. That was the moment I saw you. Hey Young signed. Not as staff, as a person. Someone with the same gift I'd relied on my whole life. The ability to communicate across silence. After that, I watched you too. Saw how you defended other servers when customers were rude. How you helped the busser whose English was poor. How you signed to yourself when you thought no one was looking. Practicing, talking to someone who wasn't there. My brother, Eliza signed. Isaiah. He's 19 now, studying computer programming at community college. I sign with him in my head when I'm stressed. It centers me. I know, I figured that out. A slight smile touched his lips. You have no idea how many times I wanted to have a real conversation with you. But I was your boss. You were my employee. There were boundaries. And my world isn't safe for people I care about. The people I care about hung in the air between them. Eliza's pulse quickened. Well, I'm in your world now, she signed. So let's make sure you live through this trial. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. The next 2 hours were a crash course in organized crime, loyalty, betrayal, and the impossible tightrope of going legitimate while enemies pulled you back into darkness. Hey, Jung's hands painted pictures. His father, Park Dong-min, who'd built a gambling and protection empire in LA's Koreatown through ruthless efficiency and strategic violence. How Hae-young had taken over at 22 when his father died of a heart attack, inheriting not just businesses, but blood debts and ancient rivalries. I spent the first 3 years consolidating power. He signed, eliminating threats, making examples. I won't lie to you, Eliza. I've hurt people, ordered things I'm not proud of, but I never killed anyone who wasn't trying to kill me first. And when I had control, I started changing things. How? Legitimate businesses, restaurants, real estate, import-export companies, using our resources to help the community instead of bleeding it. The old guard hated it. They said I was weak, that my father would be ashamed, but I didn't care. I was tired of blood. And the federal witness? Thomas Nguyen. He was going to testify about connections between my organization and city officials. But here's the thing. He was testifying about my father's era, not mine. I'd already started cooperating with the FBI, giving them information on human trafficking rings and drug operations I wanted no part of. Nguyen's testimony would have helped my case, shown the distinction between my father's operations and mine. His death was the worst possible outcome for me. So who killed him? The Choi organization, their old rivals, traditional hardliners who see my reforms as betrayal. If they can get me convicted and executed, they absorb my territory and roll back every change I've made. They paid my lawyer, Robert Chen, $500,000 to abandon me at the crucial moment. They probably also paid the court interpreter to get lost this morning. Eliza processed this, mind racing. Evidence? Can you prove any of this? I had evidence. Financial records, testimony from a Choi lieutenant I'd flipped, surveillance footage. Chen had all of it. When he disappeared, it went with him. Then we find Chen. In 2 hours, before trial resumes, his signs conveyed gentle skepticism. You'd be surprised what a motivated waitress can do. Eliza stood, turning to the bailiff. I need to make a phone call. It's related to the defendant's case. The bailiff, a heavy-set black man named Jerome, looked uncertain. Ms. Monroe, you're not actually his lawyer. I can't just... Jerome, I served you breakfast at Songbird 2 days ago. Scrambled eggs, extra hot sauce, no toast because you're trying to cut carbs. You left me a $20 tip and told me I reminded you of your daughter. Eliza met his eyes. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm all Mr. Park has right now. Please. Jerome sighed. 5 minutes, and I'm listening to every word. Eliza called the one person who might be able to help, her best friend since high school, Keisha Williams, who'd gone into computer programming and had a side hustle that existed in the gray areas of legality. When Keisha answered, Eliza could hear the confusion in her voice even before words. Girl, aren't you supposed to be at work? Why are you calling from a blocked number? Keish, I need a favor. A big one. Possibly illegal one. A pause. I'm listening. I need you to track a lawyer named Robert Chen. Last known address, credit card usage, phone pings, anything you can find in the next 90 minutes. He's running from some very dangerous people, so he's probably using burner phones and cash, but maybe there's something. Eliza, what the hell have you gotten yourself into? I'm interpreting for a murder trial. The defendant's lawyer disappeared with all the evidence that could prove his innocence. If we don't find Chen, an innocent man might die. Another pause, longer this time. Then, send me everything you know about this Chen guy. I'll see what I can do. But Eliza, when this is over, you're telling me the whole story over wine. Lots of wine. Deal. I love you. Love you too, you crazy woman. Court resumed at 2 p.m. with the circus atmosphere dialed up to 11. News cameras lined the hallway. Protesters outside waved signs, justice for Nguyen and death to mob bosses. Inside, every seat was filled. The prosecution team had tripled in size, clearly brought in reinforcements to handle the irregular interpreter's situation. And at the defense table sat Hai Young, now in a suit. Someone had brought him proper clothes, looking every inch the powerful businessman except for the absolute silence that surrounded him. Eliza took her position beside him, hyper-aware of every eye on her. A certified ASL interpreter, an older white woman named Dorothy, sat nearby with a tablet, ready to flag any concerns. Judge Whitmore's gaze swept the room like a lighthouse beam, daring anyone to step out of line. Mr. Thornton, your opening statement. The prosecutor stood, buttoning his jacket with theatrical precision. He was good, Eliza could tell within seconds. His voice was measured, confident, painting a picture of Park Hae-jung as a cold-blooded crime lord who'd ordered Thomas Nguyen's death to prevent testimony that would have destroyed his empire. He cited evidence, phone records showing calls from Hae-jung's organization to known hitmen, financial transfers, witness testimony from members of Hae-jung's crew who'd been offered immunity for cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Thornton said, his voice dropping to a confidential tone, the defense would have you believe that Mr. Park is a victim of elaborate framing, that his silence is somehow noble, that his disability makes him sympathetic. Don't be fooled. Park Hae-jung runs one of the most sophisticated criminal organizations in California. His silence isn't a disability, it's a weapon. He uses it to maintain deniability, to avoid leaving voice records, to appear vulnerable when he's anything but. And when Thomas Nguyen threatened his empire, Park did what he's always done. He eliminated the threat. Eliza felt Hae-jung's stillness beside her, the coiled tension in his body. His hands didn't move, but she could feel the fury radiating from him. Now, Judge Whitmore said when Thornton finished, we have an unusual situation. The defense has no attorney. Mr. Park, do you intend to represent yourself? Hae-jung's hands moved, and Eliza translated. Your Honor, I'm not a lawyer. I have no legal training. But with Ms. Monroe's help, I'd like to make an opening statement and conduct my defense until proper representation can be secured. Thornton shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is unprecedented. A defendant can't just... Mr. Thornton, shut up. The judge's tone was pleasant, but her eyes were steel. The defendant has a constitutional right to represent himself. Whether it's wise is another question, but it's his right. Mr. Park, you may proceed. But I warn you, I'll hold you to the same standards as any attorney. No special treatment because you're pro se. Hae-jung stood, and the courtroom fell silent. Even in silence, he commanded attention. 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the same controlled grace Eliza had observed countless times. He positioned himself where the jury could see his hands clearly and began to sign. Eliza's voice became his. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Park Hae-jung. I'm 28 years old. I've been mute since birth, a genetic condition that prevents me from producing speech. I communicate through Korean Sign Language and, more recently, American Sign Language. The woman standing beside me, Ms. Eliza Monroe, is translating my words for you. She's not a lawyer. She's a waitress at my restaurant, but she's also the only person who showed up when I needed someone. Some jurors shifted, clearly uncomfortable. Others leaned forward, engaged. The prosecutor told you I use my silence as a weapon. He's partially right. In my world, silence has been survival. When you can't speak, you learn to watch, to listen with your eyes, to understand what people mean rather than just what they say. And I've watched people my entire life, watch them underestimate me, dismiss me, assume that because I can't speak, I can't think or plan or defend myself. Eliza felt the power in his words, the raw honesty that came from years of being invisible. I inherited my father's business when I was 22. Yes, it was a criminal organization. Yes, I've done things I'm not proud of, but I've also spent the last 6 years trying to transform that organization into something legitimate. I opened restaurants, invested in real estate, created jobs. I've donated millions to community programs, education initiatives, and support for disabled individuals. I worked with the FBI to expose human trafficking operations I wanted no part of. Thomas Nguyen's death was a tragedy, but it wasn't my doing. It was the work of rivals who want to eliminate me and erase the changes I've made. They paid my attorney to abandon me. They've stacked evidence against me. And they're counting on you believing that a mute man can't possibly defend himself against such overwhelming odds. He paused, letting the words sink in. Then his hands moved again, slower now, more deliberate. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for fairness. Watch the evidence. Listen to the testimony. And ask yourselves, does this case make sense? Or are we all watching an execution disguised as justice? He sat down. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Even Thornton looked thrown. Judge Whitmore nodded slowly. Thank you, Mr. Park. Mr. Thornton, call your first witness. The prosecution's case unfolded with surgical precision. First came the detective who'd investigated Nguyen's murder, a drive-by shooting outside his apartment. Professional hit, no witnesses. Then came the forensic expert linking shell casings to guns used in previous Park organization hits. Then came the phone records showing calls between Hai Young's lieutenants and known criminals hours before the murder. Each witness was devastating, and each time when Judge Whitmore asked if the defense wanted to cross-examine, Hai Young stood and signed questions, careful, probing questions that Eliza translated with growing respect for his strategic mind. To the detective, did you investigate other suspects? The Choi organization had equal motive. Nguyen's testimony would have hurt them too. Detective, we followed the evidence where it led. That's not an answer. Did you investigate the Choi organization? Yes or no? We prioritized the strongest leads, which means no. You decided I was guilty and built a case around that assumption. Thornton objected, but the seed was planted. Hai Young moved through witnesses like a chess player, never aggressive, just persistent, asking questions that revealed gaps in the investigation, alternative explanations, rushed conclusions. By the time court recessed for the day, Eliza was exhausted. Her voice was raw from hours of translation. Her hands ached from signing. But more than that, she was in awe. Hai Young wasn't just defending himself. He was dismantling the prosecution's case, piece by piece, using nothing but silence, patience, and devastating logic. How did you learn to do that? She signed as they were led back to the holding room. Law school, he signed back casually. I have a JD from USC, passed the California bar on my first try. Eliza stopped walking. You're a lawyer. Was. I never practiced. My father wanted me to understand the law before I broke it. His expression was wry. Know your enemy, he used to say. Turns out knowing the law is useful when you're fighting for your life. You could have mentioned this earlier. I wanted to see if you'd still help me thinking I was just a criminal. Eliza wanted to be angry, but found herself laughing instead, a slightly hysterical sound that drew concerned looks from the bailiff. You're impossible. I'm alive because of you, he signed. That makes everything else irrelevant. That night, Eliza couldn't sleep. She lay in her small apartment in mid-city, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day. Her phone buzzed. A text from Keisha. Found something. Call me. Tell me you have good news, Eliza said when Keisha picked up. Define good. I found Robert Chen. He's in a motel in Riverside, using his dead mother's credit card. Sloppy for a lawyer, but panic makes people stupid. But Eliza, here's the thing. He's not just hiding. He's terrified. I hacked his email. Don't ask. And there are messages from an encrypted account. Whoever paid him to disappear is threatening his family if he resurfaces. Can you trace the encrypted account? I'm trying, but these people are good. Military-grade encryption, routing through multiple countries. This isn't amateur hour. Keep trying. And Keisha, thank you for believing me. Girl, I've known you since we were 14. If you say this Park guy is innocent, I believe you. Just be careful. These people play for keeps. Eliza hung up and sat in the dark, weighing her options. Chen was the key. He had the evidence that could prove Hai Yung's innocence. But he was too terrified to come forward, which meant she needed to make him more afraid of staying silent than of speaking up. The next morning she arrived at court with a plan. But first she needed to talk to Hai Yung alone. "I've found Chen," she signed in the holding room. "He's in Riverside, hiding. But he won't come forward. They're threatening his family." Hai Jung's expression darkened. "Then he's useless to us. Not if we can protect his family. You said you've been working with the FBI. Can they put Chen's wife and kids in protective custody?" He considered this. "Maybe, but I'd need to reach my FBI contact, and I'm in custody. They monitor my calls. What if I make the call? You sign what to say, I translate." "Eliza, that makes you an accessory. If this goes wrong, I'm already an accessory by being here." She leaned forward. "Hey, Young, I didn't walk into that courtroom yesterday to half-ass this. Either we go all in, or we don't go at all. Your choice." He stared at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. Respect, admiration, and something deeper that made her pulse quicken. "You're the bravest person I've ever met." "I'm the stupidest person you've ever met. There's a difference." But she smiled. "Now who's your FBI contact?" Agent Lisa Brennan met Eliza in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the courthouse during lunch recess. She was in her 40s, Korean, American, with sharp eyes that cataloged every detail. "You're the waitress turned interpreter," she said without preamble. "I've been watching the trial coverage. Gutsy move. Mr. Park says you've been working with him on taking down trafficking operations. Among other things, Park's been a valuable asset, helping us understand the ecosystem, providing intelligence. But he's also a crime boss. We're not friends. He didn't kill Thomas and Nguyen." "I know." Brennan took a sip of coffee. "Nguyen's death was sloppy, not Park's style. He's precise, methodical. This was meant to look like his work, but done by someone less sophisticated. The Choi organization. Almost certainly. But knowing and proving are different things." She studied Eliza. "What do you want from me?" "Robert Chen. He has evidence that proves Park's innocence. But he's hiding because the Choi organization is threatening his family. If you can protect them, put them in witness protection or whatever, maybe he'll testify." "And you know where Chen is?" Eliza hesitated. Giving up Chen's location could endanger him further, but it could also save Hae Jung. "Riverside, I can get you the exact address." Brennan pulled out her phone. "Send it to me. I'll have a team there in 90 minutes. But Eliza, understand something. If Chen testifies and it leads to Park's acquittal, the Choi organization will come after everyone involved. That includes you. I'm already involved. Being an interpreter is one thing. Being the person who found the key witness is another. You're painting a target on your back. Then I guess I better learn to shoot." Eliza stood. "Get Chen and his family to safety. I'll handle the rest." That afternoon's testimony was brutal. The prosecution called members of Hae Young's organization who'd been offered immunity deals. One by one, they painted him as ruthless, willing to do anything to protect his interests. Eliza translated their words, feeling each accusation like a physical blow. But during cross-examination, Hae Jung was surgical. He asked each witness, "How much are you being paid for this testimony? What charges are being dropped in exchange for your cooperation? Who coached you on what to say?" Slowly, methodically, he revealed that every witness had been compromised, either by immunity deals that freed them from serious charges or by direct payments from the prosecution's Witness Protection Fund. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hae Jung signed during a break, Eliza translating, "these men worked for me. Some are telling the truth about my past, but they're also desperate, facing decades in prison if they don't cooperate. Ask yourselves, would you lie to stay free?" By 4 p.m., Eliza's phone buzzed with a text from Brennan. Chen secured. Family and protective custody. He's willing to testify, but we need to move fast. Choi organization knows we have him. Eliza showed Ha-Young the message. His hands moved rapidly. Tell the judge we have a witness who needs to testify immediately. Tonight, if possible. Every hour we wait increases the danger. Eliza stood. Your Honor, the defense has located a crucial witness. We request that he be allowed to testify as soon as possible due to security concerns. Thornton exploded. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We haven't been given time to prepare, to review this witness's testimony. The defense wasn't given time to prepare when my attorney was paid to disappear. Eliza shot back, then caught herself. I'm sorry, Your Honor. That was Mr. Park's response, not mine. No, Ms. Monroe. You're getting the hang of this. Judge Whitmore's expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes held approval. Mr. Thornton, irregular is the theme of this trial. The witness will testify tomorrow morning, first thing. We'll reconvene at 8 a.m. Court adjourned. That evening, Eliza met Robert Chen in a secure FBI facility. He looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed, 10 pounds thinner than his law firm photos. But when he saw her, relief flooded his features. You're Park's interpreter. Agent Brennan said you're the one who found me. I'm also the one who's going to make sure you testify tomorrow without getting killed. Eliza sat across from him. Tell me everything. What evidence do you have? Chen pulled out a thumb drive. Financial records showing payments from the Choi organization to the hitman who killed Nguyen. Testimony from a Choi lieutenant who defected. He's willing to admit they ordered the hit in Frame Park. Surveillance footage showing the actual shooter, who has ties to Choi, not Park. And recordings of conversations between Choi leadership discussing the frame job. Why did you run? They called me, said if I presented this evidence, they'd kill my wife and kids. Showed me pictures of my daughter at school, my son at soccer practice. They knew everything. Our routines, our security, our vulnerabilities. His hands shook. I took their money and ran. Figured at least that way my family would be safe and I'd have resources to disappear. You abandoned an innocent man to save your family. Yes. Chen met her eyes. And I'd do it again. But now that my family is protected, I can make it right. Eliza wanted to judge him, but couldn't. If it were Isaiah's life on the line, wouldn't she do the same? Tomorrow you tell that jury everything. No holding back. I will. But Ms. Monroe, you need to understand. Testifying means war. The Choi organization will retaliate. Against me, against Park, against anyone who helped expose them, including you. Then I guess it's a good thing I'm stubborn. The courtroom the next morning was packed beyond capacity. Word had spread that a mystery witness would testify, and media speculation was rampant. Eliza took her position beside Ha-Young, their hands brushing briefly, a moment of connection that sent electricity up her arm. Are you ready? She signed. I've been ready for 6 years. His expression was calm, but she saw the tension in his shoulders. Whatever happens today, Eliza, I want you to know. You gave me hope when I had none. That's a debt I can never repay. You can repay it by staying alive and out of prison. She tried to smile. I didn't go through all this to have you executed anyway. Judge Whitmore called the court to order. The defense may call its witness. The defense calls Robert Chen. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Chen walked in flanked by FBI agents, looking terrified but determined. He was sworn in, and Eliza watched Ha-Young prepare to question his former attorney, the man who'd betrayed him. Mr. Chen, Ha-Young signed, Eliza translating, you were my attorney until 3 days ago. Why did you abandon my case? Chen's voice was barely audible. I was paid $500,000 by the Choi organization to disappear. They also threatened my family, showed me surveillance photos, detailed their daily routines, made it clear that testifying on your behalf would result in their deaths. And yet you're here now, because the FBI has my family in protective custody, and because what I did was wrong. I sold out an innocent man to save my own skin. Do you believe I ordered Thomas Nguyen's death? No, I have evidence proving you were framed. Chen produced the thumb drive. Financial records, witness testimony, surveillance footage, everything showing the Choi organization ordered the hit and made it look like your work. Thornton was on his feet. Objection! This evidence hasn't been reviewed by the prosecution. That's because it was hidden by the same people trying to frame Mr. Park, Hae-jung signed. Your Honor, this evidence was gathered as part of my legal defense. It's attorney work product, legally obtained and relevant to this case. Judge Whitmore reviewed the thumb drive's inventory. I'll allow it. Mr. Thornton, you'll have time to review during recess. Mr. Chen, walk us through this evidence. For the next 2 hours, Chen methodically destroyed the prosecution's case. He showed financial transfers from Choi organization accounts to known hitmen, played recordings of Choi leadership discussing how to frame Hae-jung, presented testimony from the defected lieutenant identifying the real shooter. The jury was riveted. Even Thornton looked shaken as his carefully constructed narrative collapsed. When Chen finished, Hae-jung signed, "No further questions." Thornton's cross-examination was desperate, trying to paint Chen as a liar, who'd taken bribes and now was seeking immunity. But Chen was ready, admitting his mistakes while holding firm on the evidence. "I'm not proud of what I did," he said, voice steady now. "But the evidence speaks for itself. It doesn't need me to be a saint." Just as Thornton was winding down, the courtroom doors burst open. 4 gunmen in black masks stormed in, automatic weapons raised. "Nobody move!" Chaos erupted. Shots fired, not at the crowd, but at Robert Chen. Eliza saw him fall, blood spreading across his chest. She felt Hae-jung push her to the floor, his body covering hers. The certified interpreter screamed. Jurors dove for cover. Security returned fire. It was over in 30 seconds. The gunmen, 2 dead from return fire, 2 fleeing, had only one target. Robert Chen lay dead on the witness stand. The evidence thumb drive was gone, ripped from his hand by one of the attackers. Judge Whitmore's face was a mask of fury. "This courtroom is under lockdown. Medical assistance now." Eliza looked up at Hae-jung, his expression grim. He signed, "They silenced him, destroyed the evidence. We're back to square one." But then Agent Brennan appeared at the courtroom door, holding up another thumb drive. "Your Honor, I had the evidence backed up before Chen entered the courtroom. I anticipated this." Court reconvened 3 hours later in a secure location, a federal building with heightened security, metal detectors, armed guards at every entrance. The jury looked traumatized but determined. Judge Whitmore had a bandage on her hand from flying glass, but her expression was pure steel. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "we've just witnessed a violent attack on our justice system. 3 people are dead. Many more are injured. The Choi crime organization has claimed responsibility, stating they will not allow false testimony to proceed. I'm offering you all the option to declare a mistrial due to duress. Show of hands, who wants to stop?" Not a single hand rose. 12 jurors, shaken but resolute, stared back at her. "Then we proceed. Mr. Park, your closing statement." Hae-jung stood, and Eliza saw the weight of responsibility in his shoulders. He signed slowly, deliberately, giving her time to match his cadence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, 3 days ago, I sat here accused of murder. My attorney had abandoned me. I had no voice, no defense, no hope. And then a woman I'd barely spoken to, a waitress who served me coffee every morning, walked into this courtroom and gave me back my voice." He gestured to Eliza. "Ms. Monroe didn't have to be here. She risked her job, her safety, her life to make sure I could defend myself. Why? Because she believes in justice. Because she grew up with a mute brother and knows what it means to be silenced. Because she saw a man who needed help and refused to look away. Today, gunmen tried to kill us, tried to silence the truth through violence, and they failed. Because truth doesn't require a voice, it requires witnesses willing to speak it. Robert Chen is such a witness. He showed you evidence that destroys the prosecution's case. Evidence of a frame job, of calculated murder by my rivals, of a conspiracy to eliminate me and roll back every reform I've fought for. I can't speak to tell you I'm innocent, but the evidence speaks for me. The recordings speak, the financial records speak, the testimony of a defected Choi lieutenant speaks, and most importantly, the willingness of the Choi organization to commit mass murder in a courthouse speaks volumes about their desperation." He paused, hands still, then continued, "I'm not asking you to like me. I'm not asking you to forget my past. I'm asking you to look at the evidence and see what's real. I was framed by rivals who want to destroy everything I built. And if you convict me based on manufactured evidence, they win. Violence wins. Fear wins. Don't let them win. Look at the facts. Deliberate carefully. And deliver a verdict based on truth, not fear. He sat. The courtroom was silent. Even Thornton, arm in a sling, looked moved. Judge Whitmore turned to the jury. You've heard the evidence. You've witnessed today's attack. Now you must decide. Did Park Hae-jung order Thomas Nguyyen's murder, or was he framed by a rival organization? Bailiff, escort the jury to deliberation. The wait was agony. Eliza and Hae-jung sat in a secure holding room, FBI agents outside, both too exhausted to sign much. Finally, Eliza broke the silence. What happens if they convict you? I get the death penalty. California rarely uses it, but this is high profile enough that they'll make an exception. And if they acquit? War. The Choi organization will see it as a declaration of conflict. They'll come after me with everything they have. So either way, you die. His hands moved slowly. Not if I'm smart. Not if I use my acquittal to destroy them completely. Use the FBI's resources, expose every operation, dismantle their organization from within. That's a long shot. Everything about this week has been a long shot. He reached across the table, taking her hand. The contact was electric, intimate, despite the clinical setting. Eliza, when this is over, win or lose, I need you to disappear for a while. Leave LA. The Choi organization will target you for helping me. I'm not running. You have to. Your brother needs you alive. I can protect myself. I can't protect you if you're stubborn enough to stay in their crosshairs. You don't get to tell me what to do. I'm not telling. I'm begging. His signs were desperate. Eliza, you've given me everything. Let me give you this. Safety, distance, a chance to live beyond this nightmare. And what about you? Do you get to live beyond it? I stopped hoping for that years ago, but meeting you, having you fight for me, it made me remember what hope feels like. Don't take that away by getting yourself killed out of stubbornness. Eliza wanted to argue, but the door opened. Agent Brennan stood there, expression unreadable. Jury's back. 90-minute deliberation. That's either very good or very bad. The courtroom felt different now, haunted by the violence, charged with anticipation. The jury filed in, faces carefully neutral. Judge Whitmore looked each one in the eye, then turned to Hae-jung. The defendant will rise. Hae-jung stood, Eliza beside him, her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone could hear it. She reached out, briefly squeezed his hand, a moment of connection that felt like a lifetime. Madam Foreman, has the jury reached a verdict? A middle-aged Latina woman stood. We have, Your Honor. In the case of the people versus Park Hae-jung, on the charge of first-degree murder, how do you find? Time stretched. Eliza felt like she was watching from outside her body, saw Hae-jung's stillness, Judge Whitmore's focused attention, Thornton's tense expectation. We find the defendant not guilty. The courtroom exploded. Reporters sprinted for exits. Spectators shouted. Someone cried. And Eliza turned to Hae-jung, whose careful composure finally cracked. His hands moved, trembling. We did it. You did it. You saved my life. We saved your life, she signed back, tears streaming down her face. Together. Judge Whitmore's gavel thundered. Order! This court is adjourned. Mr. Park, you're free to go. But I warn you, the FBI will be monitoring your activities closely. Don't make me regret this verdict. You won't, Your Honor, Eliza translated as Hae-jung signed. I promise. Outside the federal building, past layers of security and through crowds of press, Hae-jung and Eliza finally found space to breathe. A black SUV waited, FBI escort, taking them to a safe house until the immediate Choi organization response could be assessed. In the back seat, finally alone except for the driver, Hae-jung turned to Eliza. His hands moved carefully. I meant what I said. You need to leave LA. And I meant what I said. I'm not running. Eliza. No. Listen to me. Her signs were fierce. I didn't risk everything to defend you just so you could push me away the second you're free. I see you. I know who you are. Past, present, dangerous future. And I'm choosing to stay anyway. Why? Why risk everything for someone like me? Because for 3 years you saw me. Not the waitress, not the black woman people could ignore, not the disabled person's sister. You saw me. And when everyone else abandoned you, I couldn't walk away from someone who'd made me feel visible. His expression cracked, and suddenly his hands were in her hair, pulling her close, his forehead pressed to hers. I'm in love with you. I think I have been since you signed to me about refrigeration systems 3 years ago, and looked at me like I was just a person, not a curiosity or a threat. That's the longest time anyone's ever pined for me without saying anything. I couldn't say anything. You were my employee, I was your boss. There were boundaries. Those boundaries are gone now. So what do we do? Eliza pulled back just enough to sign clearly. We figure it out. Together. No more pushing me away to keep me safe. No more noble sacrifice bullshit. We're a team now. Partners. Partners in what? Running a restaurant? Dodging assassins? Rebuilding a criminal empire into something legitimate? Yes, all of it. She smiled. I didn't just learn Korean Sign Language for fun. I learned it because I wanted to understand you. Now I do, and I'm not walking away from that. He kissed her then, soft, desperate, perfect. And Eliza kissed him back, tasting freedom and danger, and the promise of something she'd never expected. A future built on truth instead of pretense. The safe house was a nondescript property in Pasadena, surrounded by FBI surveillance. Inside, Eliza called Isaiah, who'd been frantic with worry after seeing the courtroom shooting on news. I'm okay, she signed through video chat. Shaken up, but okay. Isaiah, 19 and beautiful in the way their mother had been, signed back furiously. You could have died. What were you thinking, jumping into a mob trial? I was thinking that someone needed help, someone who couldn't speak for himself. Someone like you. I'm not a crime boss. No, but you know what it's like when people don't listen because you communicate differently. I couldn't let that happen to him. Isaiah's expression softened. You love him. The way you sign about him, you're in love with this guy. Is it that obvious? To me, always. He smiled. Just be careful. The news is saying there's a gang war coming. I can't lose you, Eliza. You're all I have. You're not losing me. I promise. But even as she signed it, Eliza wondered if that was a promise she could keep. That night, unable to sleep, Eliza found Hae-young on the safe house balcony, staring at the city lights. She joined him, and for a while they just stood together in comfortable silence. Finally, his hands moved. Tell me about your brother. Really tell me. I want to know everything. So she did. About Isaiah being born mute, about their parents' struggle to afford therapy and education, about learning ASL as a family, about the isolation of being different in a world that prized conformity, about her father dying when she was 16, her mother working herself to exhaustion, about dropping out of college to support them. That's why you were at Songbird. Hae-young signed. You needed money for Isaiah's education. And his medical care. He has other health issues related to his condition. The bills never stop. I'll pay them. All of them. Past, present, future. Hae-young, don't argue. You saved my life. Let me do this. Please. Eliza wanted to refuse, to maintain independence, but she thought about Isaiah's struggles, about the debt crushing their family. Okay, she signed, but as a loan. I'll pay you back. No, as a gift, from one person who understands silence to another. The Choi organization's response came 3 days later. A car bomb outside Songbird restaurant detonated at 3 a.m. when the building was empty. A warning, not an attempt at mass casualties. The message was clear. They weren't finished. Hae-young called an emergency meeting with his lieutenants, 5 men who'd been with him since his father's era. Eliza sat beside him, translating as he laid out his plan. The Choi organization wants war, so we give them war, but on our terms. We're going fully legitimate, immediately. Every illegal operation shuts down today. Gambling, protection, smuggling, done. We use our resources and FBI cooperation to expose every Choi operation in LA. We don't fight them with violence, we destroy them with evidence. One of the lieutenants, a grizzled man named Rue, signed back. That makes us weak. Shows we're afraid. It shows we're smart. They expect us to retaliate traditionally. Instead, we let the law do what violence can't, permanently dismantle their organization. And when they're gone, we're the last ones standing, completely legitimate, untouchable. Another lieutenant, younger, named Park Jun-seo. And what about us? We've been with your family for decades. What happens to soldiers in a legitimate empire? You become businessmen, restaurant managers, real estate developers, community leaders. I'm offering you a way out of the cycle that killed my father and will eventually kill all of us if we don't change. The lieutenants exchanged looks. Finally, Rue signed, "We're with you. But if this fails, we reserve the right to say, 'I told you so,' at your funeral." Fair enough. The next 6 weeks were a hurricane. Hae Wang coordinated with the FBI, providing evidence that led to raids on 17 Choi operations. Eliza stood beside him through all of it, translating, strategizing, becoming his partner in every sense. They worked 16-hour days, fell into bed exhausted, woke up tangled together. The safe house became their world, a bubble where danger existed but couldn't quite touch them. And slowly, impossibly, Eliza felt herself falling deeper in love with this complicated, dangerous, honorable man who'd rebuilt his entire life to become someone worthy of her sacrifice. "I never thanked you," Hae Jung signed one night, lying beside her. "Properly thanked you. You gave up your life to save mine. I didn't give up my life. I found a new one. Still, I owe you everything. Then give me something. Anything. Give me forever. Not because you owe me, but because you want to. Build this new life with me. Figure out what comes next. Together." He pulled her close, hands cupping her face. Forever isn't long enough, but it's a start. The final confrontation with the Choi organization came 2 months after the trial. Federal raids had decimated their operations, but the leadership remained, specifically Choi Sung-ho, the patriarch, who'd ordered both Nguyen's murder and the courthouse attack. He requested a meeting, neutral ground, just him and Hae Jung. The FBI argued against it, but Hae Jung insisted, "This ends face to face. No intermediaries, no more bloodshed." They met in a public park, Griffith Park, midday, crowded with families and tourists, FBI snipers on distant rooftops, Eliza beside Hae Jung translating. Choi Sung-ho was 70, white-haired, moving with the careful precision of a man who'd survived decades of violence. He spoke in Korean, his own interpreter translated to English. Hae Jung signed. Eliza spoke his words. "Two old enemies communicating through women, surrounded by innocence." "You've destroyed my organization," Choi said flatly. 27 arrests, millions in assets seized. My sons are in federal custody. You tried to frame me for murder, attacked a courthouse, killed innocents. What did you expect?" Hae Jung's signs were controlled, dangerous. "I expected you to fight like your father would have, with blood. Instead, you hid behind the law in this woman." Choi's gaze shifted to Eliza, dismissive. "Using a black waitress as your shield. Your father would be ashamed." "My father would be proud," Hae Jung signed, and Eliza felt the conviction in every movement. "He taught me to survive. I'm surviving by evolving, by building something that doesn't end with a bullet in an alley. Ms. Monroe isn't my shield. She's my partner. She saved my life by believing in justice when everyone else believed in violence." "Justice!" Choi spat the word. "There's no justice in our world. Only power. Then watch me prove you wrong. I'm offering you a choice. Surrender completely, cooperate with federal investigators, and I'll advocate for leniency for your sons. Or keep fighting, and I'll make sure your entire bloodline ends in prison." Choi's expression darkened. "You threaten my family?" "I'm offering your family a future. Same choice you denied me. Take it or leave it." For a long moment, the old man just stared. Then slowly he nodded. "You're not your father, for better or worse. I'll take your deal. But Park Hae-jung, hear me. You've won this war, but leaving this life isn't as simple as deciding to. It has hooks in you. One day you'll realize you can't escape what you are. Then I'll spend every day proving you wrong. 6 months later, Eliza stood in Songbird Restaurant's new private dining room, watching the grand reopening celebration. The restaurant had been rebuilt after the car bombing, expanded, transformed into something that honored Korean tradition while embracing contemporary LA diversity. Isaiah was there, signing excitedly about his new internship at a tech company, an opportunity Hae-jung had quietly arranged. Keisha was there with her girlfriend, both dressed to kill and teasing Eliza mercilessly about her dangerous boyfriend. Agent Brennan was there, off duty, surprisingly warm once the professional barriers came down. And Hae-jung moved through it all, greeting guests in sign language and through interpreters. The perfect host. He'd kept his word. Every illegal operation shut down, every resource redirected to legitimate businesses, community investment, programs for disabled youth in Isaiah's honor. He found Eliza in the crowd and his hands moved. "Step outside with me?" They went to the rooftop garden Ha-young had built, overlooking Koreatown's glittering lights. Cool air, city sounds, the sense of being above the chaos while still part of it. "I have something for you," Ha-young signed, pulling out a small box. Eliza's heart stopped. "Is that a ring?" "Yes." He opened it, revealing a simple platinum band with a single diamond. "I know this is fast. I know we've only been together 6 months. But Eliza, I've been in love with you for 3 years. I've just been waiting for permission to say it. Permission? Permission from the universe. From you. From my own conscience. Which said I had no right to ask a woman like you to join a life like mine." His signs were soft, vulnerable. "But then you walked into that courtroom and gave me back my life. And I realized, I don't want a life you're not part of. I don't want to build this new world without you beside me." Tears blurred Eliza's vision. "That's the most beautiful proposal I've ever heard. Is that a yes?" "That's a hell yes." She threw her arms around him, laughing and crying simultaneously. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll build this impossible life with you. Yes to all of it." He slipped the ring on her finger, then cupped her face, signing with one hand. "I promise you this. I will spend every day earning this, earning you, being worthy of your sacrifice." It wasn't a sacrifice. It was a choice. My choice. And I'd make it again in a heartbeat. They kissed as the city sparkled below them. Two people who'd found each other across impossible distances. A mute Korean man who'd learned to fight with silence, and a black woman who'd learned to translate that silence into salvation. The wedding, 6 months later, was everything the trial hadn't been. Joyful, intimate, perfect. Held at Songbird Restaurant, because that's where their story had really begun. Eliza wore a dress that honored both her heritage and Hae-jung's. African prints blended with Korean hanbok elements, designed by an up-and-coming artist they'd commissioned. Isaiah served as her man of honor, signing the ceremony for guests who were deaf. Keisha served as bridesmaid, crying through the whole thing. Agent Brennan attended, off-duty, with her husband. Even Judge Whitmore came, bringing a gift and a note. "You two restored my faith in the justice system. Don't fuck it up." The vows were entirely in sign language, ASL and KSL mixed together, a new language they'd created just for them. Eliza signed first. "Park Hae-jung, I promise to always give you a voice, even when the world tries to silence you. I promise to be your partner in building something beautiful from broken pieces. I promise to love you not despite your past, but because of how far you've come from it. I promise forever, in any language, any situation, any challenge, you're my person. Always in." Jung's hands moved, trembling slightly. "Eliza Monroe, I promise to see you, really see you, every single day, to value your voice as much as you valued mine, to build a world where our children grow up understanding that differences aren't weaknesses, they're strengths. I promise to honor your sacrifice by becoming the man you believed I could be. I promise forever, starting now." They kissed as husband and wife while their friends signed applause, hands waving in the air, the deaf community's way of showing joy. And Eliza felt, for the first time in her life, completely whole. 2 years later, Eliza stood in the new community center Hae-jung had built, a space dedicated to supporting disabled youth, providing resources, education, and opportunities. It was named the Isaiah Monroe Center after her brother, who now ran its technology program. The center offered sign language classes, interpreter training, job placement for deaf and disabled individuals, and legal advocacy, helping people who couldn't defend themselves find their voices. Eliza ran the whole operation, her background as a waitress translating surprisingly well into community organizing. "You built something amazing," Hae-jung signed, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her growing belly. Their daughter, due in 3 months, kicked enthusiastically. "We built something amazing," Eliza corrected, leaning back against him. "This was your idea, your resources, your determination to make your wealth matter. But your vision, your understanding of what people need, your ability to see solutions where I only saw problems." They stood together, watching young people learn sign language, watching parents connect with resources, watching a community form around the idea that everyone deserves to be heard. "Do you ever regret it?" Eliza signed. "Walking into that courtroom, changing everything?" "Never, not for a second." His hands moved to rest on her belly. "You gave me back my life. Let me live instead of just survive. How could I regret the best thing that ever happened to me? Even though it was scary, even though we almost died?" Especially because of that, because it showed me what really matters. Not power, not control, not legacy. Just this: building something good with someone you love, creating a future worth believing in. Their daughter kicked again, and they both felt it. A life they'd created together, a future unfolding. Eliza thought about the terrified waitress who'd run into a courthouse 2 years ago, about the mute man who'd been abandoned by everyone, about the impossible odds they'd overcome. "I love you," she signed. "I love you more," he signed back. "Impossible. I loved you first. I loved you longer." They argued playfully, hands flying in the language they'd built together, surrounded by the life they'd created from chaos. And Eliza understood something profound. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about perfection. They're about two broken people who choose to build something whole together, who translate each other's silence into something beautiful. 5 years after the trial, a documentary crew came to interview them. The courthouse shooting had become infamous, the trial legendary. Everyone wanted to know, how did a waitress save a crime boss? How did they fall in love? What was it like building a life from such unlikely foundations? The interviewer, a young journalist named Alana, sat across from them in Songbird's private dining room. "Ms. Park," she began. "Still Monroe Park, actually," Eliza corrected with a smile. "Hyphenated. Couldn't give up my family name." "Ms. Monroe Park, then, when you walked into that courtroom 2 years ago, did you have any idea you were starting this journey? That you'd end up married, running a community center, completely changing both your lives?" Eliza glanced at Hae-jung, who signed, "Tell her the truth." "No," Eliza said honestly. "I just saw someone who needed help, someone who was being silenced because he couldn't speak, and I thought about my brother, about every time someone dismissed him because communication was harder. I couldn't let that happen to Mr. Park, to Hae-jung, so I did what needed to be done. You risked your life. I risked comfort, safety, anonymity, but Hae-jung was risking everything just by existing in a world that sees silence as weakness. Someone had to even the scales." Alana turned to Hae-jung. "Mr. Park, through Ms. Monroe Park's translation, what was it like having someone defend you when everyone else had abandoned you?" Hae-jung's hands moved, and Eliza translated. "It was like drowning, and suddenly someone throws you a rope. You don't question why. You just hold on. Eliza was my rope, my voice, my salvation. And somewhere in that courtroom, between testimony and terror, I realized she was also my future." That's incredibly romantic, but it's also controversial. You were accused of serious crimes. Some people say Ms. Monroe Park's involvement was inappropriate, that she was biased, that the trial should have been declared a mistrial. What do you say to that? Hae-jung's signs were decisive. "I say the trial proved my innocence. The evidence, Robert Chen's testimony, the financial records, the Choi organization's violent response, all of it validated our defense. Eliza's bias was simply her refusal to let an innocent man be railroaded because of his disability. If that's controversial, then justice itself is controversial, Eliza added. People are uncomfortable when the marginalized fight back. When someone who's supposed to be invisible, a black waitress, a mute man, refuses to accept the role society assigned them. But that discomfort isn't our problem. We did what was right, and we do it again. Alana leaned forward. What advice would you give to others facing impossible situations? People who feel voiceless, powerless? Hee-jung and Eliza exchanged a look, then signed together, their hands moving in perfect synchronization. Find your voice, whatever form it takes, and if you can't find it, find someone who'll help you create it. Silence isn't weakness, it's just another language. Learn to speak it. The documentary aired to massive response. Suddenly, the Isaiah Monroe Center was flooded with donations, volunteer applications, and people wanting to share their own stories of being silenced and finding their voices. The waiting list for services grew so long that Hae-young opened 2 additional locations, one in San Francisco, one in New York. We're building an empire, Eliza signed to him one night, exhausted but happy. A different kind than your father built, but an empire nonetheless. An empire of voices instead of violence, Hae-jung agreed. I think I prefer it. Their daughter Soo-jin toddled over. 2 years old, already signing with remarkable fluency. She'd been born hearing but was growing up trilingual, English, ASL, and Korean. She signed, Daddy, story, please. Hae-jung scooped her up, settling into the couch. Which story do you want, little one? Soo-jin's answer was immediate. How you and Mommy met. Eliza laughed. You've heard that story 100 times. But I like it. It's like a fairy tale, except real. So Hae-jung told her, signs painting pictures. A courtroom. A desperate man. A brave woman who walked in when everyone else walked out. A trial that became a love story. Violence that transformed into victory. Silence that found its voice. Soo-jin listened, transfixed the way she always did. And when the story ended, with a kiss, a ring, a promise of forever, she signed, When I grow up, I want to help people like you and Mommy did. Then you will, Eliza signed, because you're our daughter, and helping people who can't speak for themselves is the family business now. Later, after Soo-jin was asleep, Eliza and Hae-jung sat on their balcony overlooking LA, the city where everything had happened, the trial, the violence, the transformation. It looked different now, or maybe they looked at it differently. Do you ever think about that day, Eliza signed? The day I walked into the courtroom? Every day. It was the day my life split in 2, before you and after. Everything before was survival. Everything after has been living. No regrets? Only one, that I didn't learn to communicate with you sooner. That I wasted 3 years of knowing you by maintaining professional distance. We weren't ready sooner. You were still becoming the man you needed to be. I was still learning to see myself as more than just a waitress surviving paycheck to paycheck. We needed to be broken before we could build something whole. Hae-jung pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence. The kind of silence that didn't need filling, that spoke volumes without words. 2 people who'd learned that communication wasn't about sound, but about intention. About seeing each other completely and choosing to stay anyway. In the distance, sirens wailed. The city never slept, never stopped moving, never stopped creating stories of conflict and resolution. But up here in this moment, Eliza and Hae-jung had found peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of partnership. Thank you, Hae-jung signed. For what? For walking into that courtroom. For giving me a voice when I had none. For loving me when I was at my lowest. For building this life with me. For everything. Eliza smiled, hands moving in the language they'd made their own. You would have done the same for me. In fact, you have done the same. Given me a life beyond just surviving, a purpose, a family, a future I never imagined. Then we're even. No, we're better than even. We're partners. That's the whole point. They kissed as the city lights sparkled below them. A mute Korean man who'd learned to fight with silence, and a black woman who'd learned to translate that silence into salvation. Two unlikely heroes who'd found each other across impossible distances and built something beautiful from the ruins of what came before. And somewhere in the city, in courtrooms and restaurants and community centers, their story was still being written, still inspiring people to find their voices, still proving that justice doesn't require sound, just someone brave enough to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. The mute Korean mafia boss in his black waitress had changed the world. Not through violence, but through voice. Not through power, but through partnership. Not through fear, but through the most revolutionary act of all, choosing to see each other's humanity and refusing to look away. And that, Eliza thought, as she fell asleep in her husband's arms, was the truest kind of victory.